Think we're live here. Awesome stuff. Let me get going on Instagram too. Always takes an extra second for some reason. There we go. There's my bald head on Instagram. Perfect. um, and I don't know what's going on with LinkedIn. I started it from Restream this time, which is a little bit different. Oh, now it's saying it's connected. Okay. Yeah, kind of weird. And Facebook is just not working at all, which is kind of a pain in the butt. Anyway, not for you to worry about. That's someone on Facebook's problem. Welcome. If you're joining in the chat, feel free to say hello. Lets me know the chat is working. I do appreciate that. I do have to kind of look across a few windows and stuff here to make sure that everything's good to go. But so far, so good. If you're new to these live streams, these are something that I want to make sure is engaging for you. So feel free to ask questions and stuff. So if you're on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, X, wherever you're from, just feel free to use the chat if you want to ask questions, interrupt me. I'm happy to answer those instead of focusing on the topic. But the topic is going to be two parts, actually. That's because I had a pretty hectic week last week. So I spent a little bit less time on like an in-depth newsletter article and talked about a couple of things from Code Commute that came up. So for those of you that are not familiar, I mean, depending on how you got to where you're watching this from, you probably are, following Dev Leader on social media. That's my primary personal brand, my primary YouTube channel. I do have a second one called Code Commute, which is what I've been adding more content to. So if you're interested in checking it out, it is here. I just added that to the chat. It's just at Code Commute on YouTube. And what's been really cool about this is that it gives me a bit of a, I don't know, like a forum for doing stream of consciousness, kind of like thoughts around software engineering, and people submit topics and questions and stuff like that. So I try to make sure as I'm commuting, because I'm not doing anything else, that I can chat through these different topics. And I think this week there's a couple of good ones, and those are what I wanted to focus on. So the first one is going to be about ramp up time for junior engineers, what that looks like, some factors that influence that. And then the second topic that we'll get into, so they'll both be shorter topics, but we'll cover them both. The second topic is around legacy code. And this idea that if you were to join a team or you're on a team and you inherit some legacy code, what do you do if there's no documentation and no one there to support you? Because this is unfortunately not an uncommon thing. So we'll chat through that. I think with that said, we'll dive into it. So I'm going to put the link to the newsletter article in case you are curious. I always mention on these, like, I understand newsletters are not for everyone, so don't feel pressured. Like, literally, if you enjoy these live streams and you just want to like follow along with the material that I'm going to go through, generally the newsletter is the place to go. You don't have to actually subscribe to it. It is totally free. The paid version has private Discord access if you want to chat and get, more one-on-one conversations or support from community members. And the second part to that is that with the newsletter paid subscription, you get access to the archive, which is currently over 70 newsletter issues. I've been doing this for a little while, so plenty of examples of newsletters to go through. Okay, so we are going to be diving into junior dev ramp-up time. Now, when I was answering this question on Code Commute, the thing that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned was that I don't think there's like a rule. I don't think there's, it's very situational. So if I want to go offer advice on this or talk about it, what I really want to make sure I'm not doing is making people think that that everyone's going to have the same sort of journey doing this. The same individual on different teams might experience completely different ramp up times. It's a long day. So completely different ramp up times, and even at the same company you might have, or the same team, you might have different individuals have different or similar ramp up times. There's so many different factors that I didn't want to go into this and say, okay, the rule is that at this type of company, you should be X weeks and that's going to be it. I don't think that that's fair. I think that's misleading. And I figured instead that I would share different thoughts around what types of things influence ramp up time. Um, so definitely, to start things off, it depends, right? That's the reality. Like many things in software engineering, it's a bit of a meme now, right? It depends, it depends. But most things depend on some context. So the couple of things that I was looking at in Code Commute when I talked about this are concepts around like what does your environment look like? So startup versus larger company, remote work versus in person. This can be very different. And I think that your environment can influence a lot of this. So um, when I was talking about this, it was more like trying to share some of my own experiences and things I've observed, but I also have to call out biases and things like that. So, for example, when coming to Microsoft, that was my first experience in a very, very large company. But also, I went from being like in person nonstop to fully remote at the same time. So, again, some bias, some things might be conflated there, but these are things I have to call out. So, to start off, if we think about startup companies or smaller companies, generally, and again, it's not a rule, but a generalization that I notice around this is that it's much more difficult for a startup to bring on someone and have sufficient time or resources to wait for them to be productive. Right? And people don't like hearing that, I think, because they don't like startups to sound like they're being cheap or not respecting people they're bringing on. But I think the reality is like startups are like fighting to stay alive. So if they're bringing on people, hiring is something that is not a perfect science by any means, and it's risky. It's risky because if your hiring process has gaps in it, and surprise, every hiring process does, it means that there's going to be some risk introduced. And risk when you're bringing on a person to a company can have a dramatic impact if you're not totally familiar or have things in place to basically uh, exit people quickly if they're not going to be a good fit. So um, that means that at a startup, if you're trying to minimize risk so that you can, number one, have someone be productive right away, and number two, essentially not waste money, like waste money as in you bring someone on, not a good fit. Now you're going to have to exit them, start again, and hire someone else. These are going to be challenging things, and you're not going to want to take risks to make sure you can get someone on quickly to be productive. Hello on LinkedIn. It's good to see the LinkedIn stream is working. I don't know why I can't even see it on my own LinkedIn. Literally says that I have not made an event. So it's kind of funny. Does it just say that I'm live or something? Oh, cool. So weird. It didn't make an event. It just started streaming live. Very bizarre. Anyway, I won't do that next time. I'll make it actually from LinkedIn so it's less confusing. So, given that startups are like this, I think the expectation, and again, it's not a rule, but the expectation is that you are able to ramp up quicker. Now, this is challenging because startups are fast paced. You don't have tons of resources around you. It's going to be chaotic for the most part, right? Just trying to keep a company going. Tayman, I don't know what that question means. Will you give me? I don't know what you're asking, unfortunately. Um, so when startups are focused on this, like it's in their best interest to make sure that ramping people up quickly and effectively, they have something in place to do it, but that's also costly. So again, these are challenges that you're going to face at startup companies for the most part. But what's also interesting is that if you're the, I don't want to say like the right mindset, but I definitely think it takes, um, okay, it's a joke. I see. uh, I think it takes a certain mindset to be effective at startup companies. So if you're looking for, um, if you're looking for tons of structure to stay effective and things like that, you're probably going to find it's a bit of a struggle at a startup, realistically, because it's probably not something you're going to get. So, some thoughts around this are different personality types. So, if you are the type of person that is going to be very proactive, very engaged, very curious, I think this can work really well, right? Because you're going to be dropped into an environment where it's go, 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 and priorities are always changing. Things are probably pretty stressful. Again, this isn't going to be every single startup, but I think it's highly likely that if a company's trying to fight to stay alive, you should expect it's going to be a little bit chaotic. Um, I do think that, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when I go into talking about like in person versus remote, but um, I think that in any case, no matter how we're slicing and dicing this, something that you want to make sure that you're doing is someone who's joining a company and trying to ramp up quickly is like you're not hesitating to ask questions. And like I said, we'll see this a little bit more in a few minutes, but I think that this is a misstep for a lot of people, as in, asking questions looks like a sign of weakness. I need to be productive right away. So people are expecting that in isolation, I will just ramp up immediately. Like, it's just not true. I think that you need to be ready to ask questions. Think about it like asking questions to make progress is not like you putting your hand up and saying, "Hey, I suck. I need you to do this for me." It's not a sign of weakness. It's nothing bad. What it actually is like a sign that you are trying to make sure that things are progressing. And I think that that's like an uncomfortable thing for some people to navigate. So I'm trying to say that in a way that makes you realize, like, okay, if I've joined a company, if I'm stuck on something, I don't know what to do, instead of being afraid, right? So instead of being afraid of saying something about it, um, I think it's really important to like reach out, be proactive. Hey, like I've tried a couple of things or I'm not sure what to do, and then reach out and get help. Get yourself unblocked. That does not mean have someone else always do your work. So you should check things out a little bit on your own. Hey, John Vandeveer, good to see you on TikTok. I'm calling you out. Um, but I think that it's really important that you actually get yourself unblocked, however that needs to look, right? It's going to be different depending on your team, how you're structured. But, sitting, being blocked on like a build issue or like you don't have clarity on something and kind of waiting for a day, days on these things, not a good recipe. You're going to want to reach out and get clarity and ask for help. People aren't going to be upset with you. People will want you to do this. So please just keep that in mind, because it's going to make a big difference in terms of getting ramped up. Pratik, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, Pratik or Pratik on YouTube. As a new grad who wants structure and autonomy during work, which type of company should I look out for? Also, how can a junior mid-level onboard and make impact quickly? So great question. The second part definitely more sort of aligned with this topic, but like don't hesitate to ask anything. On the first part, I would say generally not brand new startups. Again, these are generalizations. Anyone who's listening or watching in the future too, you can always have exceptions to everything I'm saying. So I have to speak in generalizations because I can't cover every unique scenario. But I would say for the most part, very small new startups are not going to have a lot of structure. It's probably unwise if they do, because they need to be able to pivot so much that the structure is going to like kind of impede them from being successful. So I would say small, mid to large size companies, there's lots of variation. The structure, certainly the structure part, again, generalization, I would say the larger the company, the more structure there probably is. But autonomy is probably, I don't want to say inversely proportional to that, because it can depend. I know that like my personal experience, again, I have biases here. the smaller companies afforded me more autonomy. And that's because people were like, pardon my language, but like shit's got to get done. So like, get it done, like find a way to get it done. And like, we trust you and go do. Right. And I find at larger companies, there's a lot more, um, red tape is probably too strong of a phrase, but there's more like interactions. There's more like, hey, we got to engage with this other team. There's more process and stuff like that. So, oh, awesome, great, okay. I'm terrible with names, so I'm always nervous to say people's names, and I don't want to offend anyone. So, I did an okay job, I guess. But yeah, I would say at the larger companies, there's just a little bit more like interaction that is warranted. So it's not that it's bad, but sometimes that can feel like it's taking away from autonomy. So for just to give you an example, I filmed an episode of Code Commute on the drive home from work today. So literally fresh in my mind. And one of the things I was talking about was that like sometimes, say like at Microsoft where I am, right? Like very large company, there are some things that from my startup experience, I use the word like, or the phrase like it feels bad. And it's because I've seen things be more nimble. But when I say it feels bad, I'm not saying that it is bad or it's not warranted, it's not valuable. It's just that I find that some things move slower. But there's probably good reason for it, right? There's like your surface area where you're interacting with teams is much greater. Like I worked at a startup for the last place I was at for 8 years of my career. It's been 4.5 years at Microsoft. So I have a bias for what's comfortable for me because I spent more time doing it. Right. So just something to think through. I hope that helps on the first part. On the second part, how can a junior mid-level onboard and make impact quickly? So yeah, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. I'll kind of get back to some of the stuff I wrote in the newsletter. If I change how I'm describing these things, it might be a little bit more streamlined with this question, and maybe that's a good way to do it. Couple things. So I would say onboarding buddy, and that might sound kind of funny, but like having someone that you know is set up to work with you for onboarding. So number one, if you are listening to this or watching this and you are an engineer on a team or you're someone who's sort of influencing like a tech lead or a manager on a team, I would highly recommend you have something like an onboarding buddy. This is so valuable in terms of making sure that people have a connection when they're getting started, right? There's lots of, maybe not lots, but there's other people on the team that can help, right? Generally. But knowing that like, hey, this person was literally set up to help me. I have found in my experience for literally onboarding people to teams, interns especially, this is critical, but it's not specific for interns. Having someone they know is like dedicated to help them, I think makes a huge difference with comfort levels for asking for help. Hey, thanks for creating that video on startup risk. I'm going to go the startup route. We already have an incubator meeting this week, and awesome. Glad to hear it. That's super cool. Yeah, that's exciting. Something else to think about, structured onboarding. So, sorry, before I continue on from that last point, if you are new to a place, maybe the manager that's brought you on, that might be something you could ask and say like, hey, by the way, like, is there, that they don't have onboarding buddies or something like that? Like, hey, is there someone more senior on the team that like I could be set up with to make sure that like I can go to them to ask questions? The manager might say, yeah, that's me. Depending on like if there's, they might facilitate that. As a manager, like I've been managing smaller teams where sometimes I take that role on. But what I hate to have happen is like if my day's a lot more chaotic. Like I'm in a lot of meetings. I make it such that I am open to people adding me to last minute meetings, and I don't want to block someone. So I'm happy to help people on board, but it feels really bad if I'm their blocker. So yeah, if you're onboarding, asking to have an onboarding buddy or something equivalent to that, you can find your own phrase. If onboarding buddy sounds a little weird to you, but it's one thing I recommend. Structured onboarding. So again, if you are on an existing team, please try to create something to help people on board. You can have the new people go through it and keep it up to date because big surprise, documentation is out of date basically the instant you write it. So the next person to onboard inevitably is going to be going through some type of onboarding documentation that's out of date. But hopefully some of it is still relevant, and for all the stuff that's not, they can update it and kind of keep it alive essentially. If that documentation doesn't exist in your onboarding, you can have a double benefit here. One is you're creating that documentation for the next person, right? So you're already delivering value by doing that. But I also think that it helps reinforce the things you're doing when you're onboarding. So try to document onboarding stuff to give some structure for the next person. I think it's incredibly valuable. This one is not doable for in all situations. Okay, but then this one here is FaceTime with the team. I realize that for a lot of people these days, remote is very common. Like when I started at Microsoft, that was my first role that was fully remote. I started in Canada. My team was based out of Redmond in Washington, so different time zone, completely separate from my team. And there are some people on my team I didn't meet for 3 years, like in person, which is nuts. Even after I moved from Canada out to Washington, there were people I hadn't met for a long time. So it's pretty wild. So I get when I say FaceTime, it's not feasible for everyone. But I would say if there is an opportunity, I have seen this have a dramatic impact. So I'm not a psychologist. I can't comment on all of the different aspects of this, but I think there's, pardon me, a couple things going on. One, this might seem like it's not a big deal, and it might not be because it's not affecting you, but in terms of having FaceTime with people and learning how others interact, I think we all have this, I don't know what you call it. We do this thing where we started assigning tones of voice to what people are saying, like what they're typing, how they respond to their messages, their emails, their pull request comments. You start to associate this tone with how someone you're working with is responding to you. And the dangerous part about that is that it's completely made up. It might happen to be accurate, but it's completely made up, right? If I type something to you, like you don't know if I'm happily typing this or if I'm angry with you. And so I try to insert like emojis and stuff all the time so people know, like, I'm not pissed off at you. Like, I'm just like saying we got to get this thing done or something. But it's really difficult to associate these things. And I think that having FaceTime can completely change that dynamic for people. I've seen it firsthand. It's worked for me. I've seen it with team members. I've seen it with team members, two individuals that aren't getting along well, and then they meet face to face and work together. And like, it's almost, I don't want to say like they become best buddies, but like the dynamic completely changes. Like they really enjoy each other's company, and it's like, holy crap, like why didn't we do this sooner? It's because it's not always possible. Okay, so it can absolutely change the working dynamic between two people. That's part one. Number two, I need two fingers for that. Number two is that this side effect I've seen with remote work, and I'm scanning my newsletter. I don't see it called out this way. But what I have really noticed for people onboarding remote is that there's this tendency, and this is not for everyone, but this tendency to stay blocked for a lot longer. And I feel like no matter how hard I've tried to articulate this to whether it's interns, new hires, no matter what I say and do, and trying to let them know, people on the team want you to ask for help. They're happy to help you. They want to unblock you. They're here to do that. No matter what I say and how I frame it, I find that people really struggle to believe that or lean into it. And I know this because I've talked with them after they get blocked, and they're like, I didn't want to bother them. And I'm like, I've told you 10 times in the past week that you're not going to bother anyone. But I think it's hard for them to truly take that to heart. So I have found that by getting that opportunity to meet in person, for some reason really helps them like acknowledge like this is a real person and I got to interact with them. I feel more comfortable around them. I finally believe like they want me to succeed, and I've seen that make a big change with people basically being able to unblock themselves a little bit more. Um, and yeah, Nomsies, let me come back to your question. That's an interesting one. The second part to that that I wanted to mention with the remoteness is like personality types. I kind of hinted at this earlier. I think there are some people that are very self motivated, and from my observations, people that are just willing to ask questions, like get past that like that discomfort of like, oh, I don't want to bother someone, but like they'll just instead reach out like, hey, like I'm stuck on this. I tried X, Y, and Z. It doesn't work. Or I'm stuck on this. I actually didn't understand what this was saying or what I'm supposed to do. Could you give me some guidance? The people that are willing to do that, like, I don't, I think I can say this with confidence. 100% of the time, in my experience, that I've observed this, have a much smoother onboarding. They can get to being productive much quicker. Because what they're doing is recognizing I'm stuck. I don't want to be stuck. The way to get unstuck is to ask. Now, I'll share an inverse to this one in just a moment. But I've seen a lot of people that are remote having this hesitation to reach out and ask for help, and that can really impede their progress for onboarding. I'm not saying that makes them a worse person. They're less intelligent. They're not going to be successful, but I definitely have seen that slow down progress for onboarding. And I wish I could make this more clear for people. Like no one is going to be upset with you for asking for clarity and trying to get unblocked. It's just not how it happens. People want you to be successful. So if you're stuck, ask. Before I go back to chat, the other thing I wanted to mention is that I've had experiences in person with new hires where they went too far the opposite way, and instead of asking to get unblocked, what was happening was they actually, this is going to sound kind of silly, but please bear with me. They actually struggled with problem solving, and what was happening was that they would ask for help when they hadn't tried anything. So they would try nothing and basically just ask for help. And we perpetuate the problem when we just give someone the answer. So, hey, like, I don't know how to do this. And someone goes, no worries. And then they do it for them. And that person goes, okay, like, great, I can move on to the next step. And then they go, oh, I don't know how to do this. Hey, can you help me? And then someone goes, oh, yeah, let me give you the answer. And what happens is this, like, it's a pretty crappy feedback loop, but it feels like to one person, hey, I'm getting unblocked, I'm making progress. Over time, it feels like for the person helping, like, why am I constantly doing this stuff? Like I feel like I'm always doing someone else's work. And it doesn't help that other person build up problem solving. So one of the recommendations I've always had is like, try something first. And that way, when you go to ask for help, expect that someone will say, what have you tried so far? And I feel like if you can say, I've tried something, or I've tried two things, like you're in a good spot. So do ask for help. Okay, checking chat. Have you ever had a weird feeling where people are looking up to you for answers, even though you're just as confused as they are? Yes. Yeah, a lot. This happens at Microsoft a lot. So couldn't disagree more. Well, I don't know who you're responding to, so you can feel free to elaborate on that. So I think this happens to me a lot at Microsoft, especially like for background. When I was at Magnet Forensics before Microsoft, I was at Magnet Forensics for 8 years, and I had built a lot of the sort of the product base that they have, or at the time they had. I had built a lot of the original pieces of that, not the very first like program that was created by the founder, but like we had rewritten a lot of that. I had rewritten entire apps. I had built lots of the bases of products that they have there. So even though I had moved on from those things, At any point in time, teams could call me over and I could go help them. I could say, oh, I remember that code. Don't touch that code. Like, that's risky. I had lots of context. And okay, Tay, man, we'll come back to that. This is definitely an environmental thing, and we should talk more about that because that sounds like shit. It's not a you thing, though. So what had happened for me is that coming to Microsoft, I went from being an expert in every area, that because I had been there for a long time, to now there are these established areas and I have zero experience. Zero. And I'm managing teams. And some of those team members, many of them, are also brand new. So they're coming to me going, hi, we need help. And I'm like, yeah, me too. Like, I need help. I don't know anything about this space. So the difference is that I need to be able to, I need to find ways to get myself ramped up and simultaneously ensure that I can help people get unblocked. And a lot of the time that means that I have to delegate to other people. So I have a different learning approach than some of the ICs on my team would have because they're in the code building it. I'm not doing that. So I'm learning things at a higher level and then trying to get them connected with people, then get them answers. So I have this experience a lot where people are looking to me for answers and I just don't know them. But I think something that I need to do, and I try to practice as an engineering manager, is like, I need to be very transparent when I don't know stuff. There's no pretending. If I don't know it, like, I will say, hey, I don't know. Or sometimes I'll say, I don't know, I'm not confident, but I think, and just let people know, because I think there's something to be said about being honest and transparent and vulnerable about that stuff to show people it's okay to not know. Because I think it's a lot worse if you try to masquerade like you do and then people catch on and they're like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. It's not a spot I want to be in. So that's kind of what I would say there. Set getters on. Our new guy started Monday last week, and we were all in office for 2 days. He told us everyone seems super locked in the following Wednesday to Friday once we were working from home. I think that there's, if the fact that you guys could go in and meet someone in office, I think that's great. I realize this opportunity doesn't exist for everyone, right? So I'm trying to be clear about that. Okay, so Tayman, let's go back to your question here, your comment, right? So every time I ask for help, I'm treated like an idiot and that I shouldn't be there. Okay, so a couple things. Without knowing the context, number one, anyone that's making you feel like an idiot, pardon my language again, is a piece of shit. No one should ever try to make anyone else feel like an idiot. So that's number one. It doesn't help anyone. It's never positive. Even when I've had people, like I gave you the example of someone turning to me asking for, like, hey, can you solve my problem? And then people giving them answers, like the situation where the problem solving wasn't really there. I would never, and if I saw someone else on my team doing this, we'd be having a conversation for sure. There is no benefit to making people feel less confident about themselves. It is only negative. It doesn't matter how pissed off you are, how shitty of a mood you're in. There is no place for it ever. Ever. So a couple things to think through. One is you might be in an environment that's pretty toxic. I don't know anything about your work environment. I don't know if it's everyone doing this, a couple people doing this, but that's something to look out for. That would be a conversation with your manager, I think. I think that's important. If your manager is also someone doing this, I would try to be transparent with them that that's not helpful. And if you're like, that scares me because I don't want to like upset my manager, they might get rid of me or something. It sounds like you're probably not in a good spot if that's the case anyway. So if it's not your manager doing that and it's certain individuals, I think that it's important to have a conversation. You can start with them directly. This is uncomfortable for a lot of people, right? It takes, I don't know, it's way easier said than done, and I fully admit that. Having difficult conversations with people. So if you had the conversation with someone and said, hey, just wanted to chat, you get on a call, and you're like, I know I've been asking for help a lot. I'm getting stuck on some things. I appreciate your time. I wanted to have this conversation because I felt like when I've been asking for help, I feel like I don't know, I'm bothering you, whatever, and it's felt like the feedback that I'm getting is either dismissive, it's making me feel a certain way. I just wanted to talk through that because I'm trying to be effective, I'm trying to be productive. Is there some other way that we could approach this where I could still get the help I need and enable you to be still effective in your role as well? I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but I think that there's ways that you can literally have conversations with individuals depending on the circumstances. If this is something that you cannot navigate and you need support, I would say go to your manager. It needs to be addressed. So the next part, and probably the last part that I'll add, unless you want to talk through more context on this, is that back to the point I said, if you are going at things and not putting in, and I'm not saying that you are doing this, by the way, I'm just framing this up. If you're not putting in some effort into, let me try it, let me explore it, before going to ask for help, certain individuals may get annoyed. They'll get frustrated. They'll say, hey, Tayman's back and he didn't try anything again. Why the hell am I always doing this? Maybe, right? I don't know. So what I would recommend is make sure, again, my litmus test for this is, okay, I have to go ask Bob for help. I should expect that Bob is going to ask me what I've tried so far. And I feel like if I could tell Bob, hey, look, here's the problem I'm facing, and here's something I tried, it wasn't working. Or here's a couple things I've tried because the first one didn't work, so I tried the second one. Now I'm stuck. You could even say both things worked and I don't know which one's better. But when you're stuck, being able to tell someone, here's what I've tried, to me is a very good litmus test. If people are still being an asshole to you when doing that, it's a them problem, and it's a conversation with your manager, because I don't think that that should be happening. You don't want to be in a toxic environment. If you feel like that's what the environment's like, I would say start exploring other opportunities. Again, easier said than done, but it's not going to be a spot where you're going to grow. Yo, what's up? Subio I. Sus boy. Oh, that's Subio. Awesome. Tarek. Hello, King. What do you think about C# for 5G applications? We're using Rust now. Rust and C++. I don't know what 5G applications you're talking about, to be honest. I use C# for absolutely everything. For years, I have built tons of stuff with C#. Whether it's back-end services, front-end stuff, if it's video games, if it's desktop software, all the forensic software that we built was in C#. So, it's very capable. It's come so long since I started using it too, so it's extremely performant. I think that there's lots of room. I'm biased because it's my favorite language to use, but it's very capable of lots of things. We run like planetary scale stuff at Microsoft using C#, right? There are certain things at the scale we're at where we do use C++ and Rust because we're trying to squeeze the ultimate amount of performance out of it. And it's not that C# is a bad language, but we've literally in some situations said it would make more sense for us to, if we want to optimize this to the full extent, we literally take a penalty in terms of development time to go back, recreate it in a new language, and going forward, we will be at a faster baseline. It's a very specific use case, though, so I think C# is extremely capable, though. Let's see. I got an 8-month internship in January at a mid-sized company. I'm getting some imposter syndrome right now as I've never worked with a larger code base. Any tips for me to be a productive worker? Yeah, so Susboy, I feel weird saying that out loud. I'm not trying to call you sus. Sorry. If you go on, I guess you're on my YouTube channel right now. If you search for imposter, I think I have a bunch of stuff there. I think maybe even my live streams they should be recorded, but if you start on my YouTube channel, there's some videos on imposter syndrome. Let me just see if I can even quickly go there and look. Because I'd like to be able to find it for you. Imposter. Yes. Okay. So this is an old video. This is real old, man. Okay. So here's an imposter syndrome video. I don't know if I have one on Code Commute. I'll put the link back to Code Commute in here, by the way, for folks that want to see more stream of consciousness stuff. By the way, if you have questions that you want, like basically between like 20 to 45 minutes of me rambling about them, ask me on Code Commute. Just comment on a video and leave your question, and I will go through it. It's not a live stream, but it's a stream of consciousness where I'm just blabbing as I'm driving. So imposter syndrome is very common. This is one of those things, like, I hate to say it, but like, expect that you will experience it your entire career. It will come and go. It becomes, I would say, the more successful you are, the more prevalent it becomes, but also the more experience you have to remind yourself, like, it's just imposter syndrome. It's just a feeling. I have lots of evidence for my success to remind myself that, like, I am not an imposter. It's just that it will keep coming up. So I think that one of the tricky things, and this is like sometimes it's like a self-esteem thing, is how I look at this stuff. And when I say self-esteem, what I mean is that sometimes it feels like getting external validation can help with these things, right? You're saying, I have imposter syndrome. And if you're like, oh, well, if I just had feedback from someone that was like, hey, you're doing a good job, like, don't worry. You're like, yeah, that helps, right? But with self-esteem, that's a very temporary thing. Self-esteem, your self-worth, how you value yourself. So if other people are giving you that value externally, it's a very temporary thing. It's like, oh, like, I got that validation, like, give me more. But when you have self-esteem that's high, you don't need the external validation. And I realize these are different things, but I find with imposter syndrome, it's similar in that sense, where you build up the validation for yourself. And it's unfortunate because it takes time, but you can do things like reminding yourself, like, I was hired for a reason. I'm on this team for a reason. People believed in my skill sets. Try to remind yourself about your successes. Remind yourself that you're always going to be facing new challenges. You're not going to know everything. And that every time you get through these periods, you're going to be smarter. You're going to be more experienced. You're going to be more effective every single time it happens. So it's hard. I'm not trying to minimize it. It's extremely hard. And this is one of those things that I think, unfortunately, is very much associated with like intellectual jobs like software engineering. So something else that can help, I think, is that if you're comfortable talking about this stuff, talking about imposter syndrome with more people is helpful. Sounds kind of silly, but when you hear other people talk to you about imposter syndrome, you realize I'm not alone. Many people experience it. I'll give you two examples. When I started at Microsoft, I was hired on as a principal level software engineering manager. I have never, at that point in my life, I had never deployed code into a data center. I was hired on as an engineering manager for the Microsoft 365 deployment agility team, responsible for helping deploy hundreds of services to hundreds of thousands of machines across the planet. I knew absolutely nothing about deployment. You can imagine that the first little bit of time there, I'm going, what the hell am I doing here? I don't know anything. Every day there's 100 new acronyms. I don't know anything. It took me a long time to feel effective. When I switched teams earlier this year, I moved over, still in Substrate, which is Microsoft 365. I moved over to the routing team. I've never been responsible for managing a large-scale firewall or for routing traffic or for running services like we do. I don't know anything about this stuff. But my manager and his manager, they had a lot of faith in me. They understood what my leadership style was. They knew that I've been successful managing teams before. They believe in me. I know that I've been successful moving into other spaces. I did it on the deployment team. I felt like I was an effective engineering manager there. Right? I had a team that really valued me being there. So, like, it's hard, but you have to keep reminding yourself that you've been successful doing these types of things before. So you will succeed at this. Aaron Tamori, love the code commute videos and the car raging that give me a Sam Sulek vlog vibes. What's your take on building in public and maintaining an open repo? So it's funny you mentioned the Sam Sulek thing. So for people that don't know, like my passion outside of software engineering is literally bodybuilding. I've been up until this year, I've been bodybuilding for as long as I've been programming. So I only stopped bodybuilding at the beginning of this year because I'm getting older now, like in my mid 30s, and I'm very short. Like I'm 5'4", so I'm a short guy. I like bodybuilding, but like when you're trying to put on size, like my BMI is like basically very obese based on a BMI, and it's not healthy to be carrying a lot of weight on your body if it's muscle or body fat. So I started realizing like, hey, look, I like the lifestyle. I like structure. I like the style of working out and stuff, but I'm not going to be a professional. And I think I want to focus more on longevity stuff. So I switched to the dark side. I now do CrossFit with my wife, which kicks my ass every time I do it. But I feel like that's a good thing. I would never say that I mastered bodybuilding, but to have been in a gym for 21 years and now I go to a workout and I'm like, I am getting my ass kicked every time. It's fun. But when I started Code Commute, I was thinking about Sam Sulek because he doesn't edit anything. It's just like he's just talking. And I was like, I could be the Sam Sulek of software engineering. So we'll see. It's kind of funny for a comparison. So take on building in public and maintaining an open repo. Yeah. So I've also talked about this. Let me see if I can pull over the live video. This is actually last week's video. I'm just going to put it, Aaron, in the chat. That didn't copy at all. One sec. It's last week's live video on DevLeader. I talked about this a lot, but I talked about projects to build. I think building in public, I really encourage people to do it. I think it's awesome. I talked about this on Code Commute too. So I think people can misalign this though. If you're building in public or learning in public, I guess is what I talked about, learning in public. Let me switch gears. Building in public, I think is good. I think that you have a sort of a network of people that you can, if you're posting about it and talking about what you're building, you have this network that can give you feedback, right? And that's something that, like, if you were to just build and, stay locked in your dark room like I am right now, and you're building stuff and never talking about it, you don't have this network that you can go learn from. So I think it's really good. Some people will say, well, okay, like I need my repo so that I can show, when I'm applying to jobs that I have a GitHub repo and like that's the only way I'm going to get hired. It's not. Do I think it can be helpful? Sure. But I think that there's different benefits to building in public. A side effect is that you can start to have a public portfolio of stuff you're building. I think it's a side effect. I don't think that's the primary reason. So I do encourage it. I think it's awesome. I hope that helps. So Experto, thank you for the video about people coming from unconventional backgrounds. If you don't mind, I'd love to hear advice on how to stand out in the atmosphere of layoffs and bar raising for junior devs while trying to find a first job. Yeah, this is, again, I'm going to link another Code Commute video. Let's see. I'm trying to help. This was maybe a little different. This one. Sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. I'm trying to copy videos. So Experto, this one's for you. It is a Code Commute video. If you scroll through the Code Commute YouTube channel and just look for recent videos, you'll probably find a couple that are seemingly related to this. I always talk about the job application process I see in multiple phases. First one is going to be literally standing out, which is challenging. It's definitely challenging. A lot of this can be based on luck, right? If you are applying to jobs where there's thousands of other applicants, you're literally decreasing your odds of standing out, right? Just because there's more volume. You could literally be the absolute best developer there. You could have the most experience and be the best developer. You could have even written the best resume, and it happens to get missed for some reason purely because of volume. Maybe they already went through the first 1,000 resumes and they said, we've got enough applicants, like we're just closing it off. There's too many to go through, right? These are all possibilities. So I think that if you're struggling to get noticed, one thing that you can switch up is applying to jobs that are different. John Vandeveer, I don't think he's still on TikTok on the live, but if you look up Latterly.io, John Vandeveer talks about this kind of stuff all the time. He recommends a very high number of applications per week and basically playing the volume game. I think that that can work. I think a thing that you should do to mix into that is less of a shotgun blast approach, but more about do that plus network. Networking is slower over time. It's more purposeful. So, making contacts at companies or like just curious about what they're building. So look on social media for people posting about what their teams and stuff are doing. Be genuinely curious, ask them questions. Don't message them and say, hey, please refer me to your company, because they're going to say, I don't know who the hell you are. Right? So that's not a strategy that I recommend, but taking the longer term approach of building up a network, I highly recommend doing that even once you have a job. Building up a network is a huge value add. So next part, projects and stuff. I said in a Code Commute video that my take on projects is that I love seeing stuff that people are iterating and building on. It doesn't have to be a perfect thing. It doesn't have to be something you have paying users. I just think there's a lot of value in showing that you're building and iterating on software. As an interviewer, I have so many things that I can talk to you about. So many. Why did you pick that technology? Like, what did you contrast it with? Oh, you rewrote that. Why did you rewrite it? Or you had to refactor that for performance. Tell me about how you figured out how to go do that. These are types of things that happen when we're building real shit. That's not to say that building a to-do list or something else doesn't have value, but those types of things aren't necessarily portfolio projects because they won't stand out. But if you told me that I built a to-do list and then I actually rewrote it to be on mobile and then I actually rewrote some other part of it to switch out the database, like, cool. Like, tell me how you arrived at those things. What did you learn? Right? So I think that there's a learning part, and I think that there's a way to stand out, and these aren't necessarily the exact same thing. But yeah, I recommend the networking and building stuff. I think some people don't realize that probably the average developer is not even building stuff on the side. They're just applying. I went to school, I went to boot camp, I'm going to apply. I got my resume ready, I'm going to go. It's probably the average, statistically. I don't have stats for the record, but I imagine that's the average. Going the next level up is going to be, okay, I'm building stuff on the side, I'm getting practice. I've talked with people that went to the same university as me, like some students that reached out, and we got on a call. There's two individuals completely separate that talked to me about this, and they were like stressed that they're not doing enough. They want to stand out. They were talking to me about participating in hackathons in different parts of the country, volunteering at startups, doing all this stuff. And I was like, man, I don't even know how you're doing that. And they're worried that they're not doing enough. I think there is an element of randomization that works against us sometimes. And we see, it's like we're biased because we see all the times where we're failing or not getting the interview, whatever it happens to be. And that's kind of misleading. So, Experto, I hope that helps a little bit. I tried to implement SCTP protocol on C#. It's not success. It's very, very bad for SCTP protocol. I don't know why it's bad. I don't know what would be bad about it, but all you can, so set getters on. I'm way back in the chat. I'm sorry. All you can do is put an effort, be resourceful as the alternative to quitting, which will not help your self-esteem. That's it, right? It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. Stick with it. It's not going to kill you, and you're not going to give up. So your only option is to be successful, right? How old am I? I am 35. I'll be 36 in April. Uh, I never thought I would wish I could be a 5'4" guy when I'm 6'1". Yeah, I can't reach anything on the top shelf, but I fit in small spaces, which is great. No clothes fit me because I'm super short and wide, so it's really unfortunate, but that's a decision I made, I guess. So, started to co when I was 10 years old. Nice. For me, I was probably 14. I was in grade 9 when I got to do that. Shreya, graduating soon, no job, no screening calls, 500 plus apps, 10% with even without cover letters, feeling stuck. Advice, thank you. Yeah, I, I'm not the best at like trying to analyze this stuff without going through it. 500 plus applications is a lot, of course. If you're like, I don't know what types of jobs you're applying for, but if there's a theme, I would consider a couple things like switching what you're applying for. Sometimes when you're applying to different types of things, you may find that you'll have a different success rate. So for example, if you're applying for, I'm just making this up, only mobile development jobs, because a lot of your experience is in mobile dev, you might try something else, right? I've even heard people saying in times like this, they're applying for, I guess you'd call them like a slightly tangential role. So maybe there's an opening for a different type of something in close proximity to being a developer as a junior position. They get in doing that, and then they can demonstrate that they have development skills, and then they can do a lateral movement. So that's one type of thing. If you're not A/B testing, I know you're saying with cover letters, if you're not A/B testing your resume, that's a missed opportunity to try and see if there's changes that you can make. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of like resume review services that are probably kind of like scammy. Not to say they all are, but hey, like send me $100 and I'll review your resume. And then like I give you really crappy feedback or useless feedback. I got your money. Now you feel bad. Like, I don't think that, some people might be good at it. I don't know any good services like this, unfortunately. But I would like, Shreya, ultimately don't give up. Like, I know easier said than done, but don't give up. The opportunity will be there. Someone commented on a code commute video in response to AI and AI taking jobs, and their perspective was like there's going to be a shortage of software engineering roles, was their perspective. So quite the opposite of what a lot of people are fearing, right? They said there's going to be a shortage. And I think it's an interesting take because the need for software developers has only continued to go up as every single industry and company becomes digitized. Very interesting. Maybe I think software engineering is going to look different. I don't think it's going away though. Susboy, what's the best way to get up to speed when first starting at a company reading through docs? I also have a video on this. You guys gotta go through my videos. I put out all these videos for you. Honestly, Susboy, if you here, this is for you, Susboy. Go read through the different live streams. I did it somewhat recently. I'm trying to scroll through as I'm talking, but I think that there's a recent one on this. So I do recommend that. There's lots of detail. My dream is Microsoft, but I've never found an application that didn't have thousands of applications. Yeah. I had been in the industry for, I don't know, 10 years professionally before going to Microsoft. And we do hire people fresh out of school. So like it's possible. But yeah, I mean, I would say like if the volume is there, it's going to be extremely competitive. It's just the unfortunate reality of it. Like this is one of those things. It's like really, it feels shitty to say out loud, but I want to say it because I think it's important you hear it. You can't control everything, right? Obviously. But I think what's important to realize is like, if you focus on the stuff that you can control, that gives you your power back. If you're like, I'm applying to this job and I did the best I could, but there's 10,000 applicants, you can't control how many applicants there are. You can control where you apply. So I know it's not what people want to hear, but like, if you keep getting caught up on stuff that's out of your control, it's going to be so demotivating. So I just want to say that out loud, and I know it's hard to hear, so sorry for saying it, but um, do I have a video on networking? I have an early one on code commute. Never mind, found it. Okay, excellent. The shotgun blast doesn't work. I've applied to over 6,000 jobs and had less than 10 interviews with no offers. Change up what you're doing. Something's got to change. Just it's just how it is. This is the problem, okay? So when people say this doesn't work, I'm telling you other people are having success with it. So it's not that it doesn't work, it's that you need to change something that you're doing. I don't know what you need to change necessarily, but it works because it's working for other people. This might be off topic, but I love your perspective. I've been working full stack, JavaScript, TypeScript, and building a personal finance app. I've gotten feedback that my project seems too junior, lack of product at full stack. Metalhead, what does it mean for a project to feel too junior? Like who says? Should I pursue a CS degree, focus on C#, which I'm interested in or go learn? One sec. TikTok thinks that no one's here because my camera's obstructed because I can't stream from the desktop properly. Should I pursue a CS degree or learn Go for better demand? How can I stand out? Language. So this is my perspective on the language stuff. I have hired software developers at Microsoft. I've had software developers start on my team before I was brought on that didn't know C# at all. I think I can count one, maybe two people in the two teams I've managed that were hired on that used C#. So the language, people get caught up on the language thing, but like it doesn't matter. You're gonna learn other languages. There's people that know C# now on the team and they're using Rust. Or people that were like getting ramped up in C# and they have to go work on our C++ code. You're going to learn it. Like it's just, a language, it's just a tool. So I think don't get too anchored to the language. I would say stick with something that you get comfortable with, right? You can go explore other things, but I would say build up some experience with the language. And if you happen to use say it's like TypeScript or JavaScript and you're doing HTML and CSS, you have some other things. If you're building a web app and you want to do TypeScript in the front end and like C# in the back end, or like you want to mix and match, like I think that's fine too. But the perspective of different languages is helpful. If you're just getting started and you're trying to touch too many languages, I feel like it can be distracting. But I don't think focusing on the language and making that a differentiator is going to be that helpful long term. If you're applying to jobs and a lot of them are asking for TypeScript and JavaScript, I would say you can absolutely lean into what's in demand, but I want to caution you that the demand will change. It will change over time, and I don't want you to be in this position where you're like, oh, I learned this and now it's not in demand. Like, it doesn't matter. Things are going to change, and you will learn different languages. It's okay. On the project being too junior, I don't know what that means. So again, like I don't know who gets to set the bar for too junior. If it's too junior, even by your standards, like go add more features to it. Make it more complicated. People, when they're looking for building things and having this experience and trying to say like, I want to be able to put this on my resume. If you're not at an employer and saying like, I can't get these opportunities, create them for yourself, right? Okay, so your personal finance app is too junior. Make it cross-platform. Go make a dedicated Android, iOS like native app for it. Go you go rewrite part of it in a different language. There's all these things you can go do that just give you more experience building stuff. So I think there's lots of stuff you can do. I don't know what it means to be too junior on some of this stuff. Jade Wilson reviewed your resume. Awesome. Jade Wilson is great. I've interviewed with her, not like to apply for a role, but like we've done like a podcast kind of thing. She's got great content. She's very smart. I think she's awesome. It's true. It's difficult to get off LinkedIn and stuff, but when you divert again to your project, it helps. AI a lot with anxiety. Okay. That was the feedback received. Engineering manager said they lack depth, complexity, and technical depth. Um, I mean, this is the weird thing? Is the engineering manager hiring you for your project? If they're saying that they want to see that you need more skills for a particular role, I don't. That might be like confusing feedback, right? Like, is your job application and your experience based purely on one project? I don't know. So I'm realizing I'm catching up on the chat now. So but I'm not trying to call out your response and make you feel awkward for it. I'm kind of redirecting my questioning back to this engineering manager that I've never met. So I think that what they're trying to tell you is like, I don't see the skills that I want to see demonstrated just in this app. But then I would say, well, what are those skills they want to see? So that's why I listen, and kind of going back in time here, what I was saying was like building these other types of things. So it's not about the app itself, it's just the experiences that you can build while doing that. So I hope that helps. Here's the other thing about hiring and applications and stuff like that. Like, everyone's got a different opinion. I'm telling you my perspective. You could literally go read a post online, watch someone else's video, and they'll say, that's bullshit. That guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Here's the right answer. What is the right answer, right? It's going to depend on the day that you're getting your application reviewed by someone making that decision. It's going to depend on the day that you're going through your interviews and which interviewers you have. There we go. Words are hard. It's going to change. And it's unfortunate. It feels unfair, and I get it. I don't like it, but it's sort of the reality of it. So focus the attention on what's in your control. You can control how many applications you put out. You can control how you structure your application. You control whether or not you write cover letters. You can't control other people, right? You can't control the number of applications. You could be the best interviewee. You could have the most experienced interview, amazing, and someone else on that day could come in and do a hair better than you. A hair better. To you, it feels like you completely lost it, right? You failed, you didn't get the job. Someone else got it, even though you did absolutely amazing. And it's really crappy. But you can't control the other people. So I want to say that because I think it's important to hear. What's Rust adoption looking like at Microsoft from your purview? Have to ask. I like Rust. It's coming up more and more. I would say, like, we have some stuff being built in Rust. This came up. It actually came up on Reddit earlier this year, and someone tried to. I'm going to put it in the chat. Someone tried to basically make it seem like Rust or Microsoft was abandoning Rust. It was kind of funny. Let me see if I can find it on my channel. Yeah, this was 9 months ago. So they went on Reddit, and they were basically, it was a job posting that made people afraid that Microsoft was like moving away from C# and stuff, but like it's just not the case. So I went onto Reddit and I responded, and I was like, no. There's like just in the area that I'm in, there's hundreds of services written in C#. There's tons. And like, we have a project that we're writing in Rust. It's literally like a performance critical thing, conscious engineering decision at the scale we're at. Got to remind people, we're talking about routing trillions with a TR, trillions of requests a day. That's not running an ASP.NET Core service with 100 users in a day. No. Trillions. It's crazy. It's across the planet. So when there's a decision being made like this, like, can we squeeze out more performance? We're talking planetary scale. It can literally make an impact to say, we want to go take more time to go develop this in a different language from scratch. That's going to be a huge cost to an engineering team, but it's actually going to make more sense for us to do. In some situations, not in all. So there is more focus on Rust in some areas, but then I think people get like kind of spooked by that. They're like, oh, so Microsoft is moving from C#, and it's like, no, like it's just another tool. Like there's tons of C++ code. There's tons of C# code. Probably somewhere there's probably lots of Python. I don't know. We have lots of PowerShell in different areas that we're in. There's just lots of stuff. These are different tools, right? So yeah, Rust is getting more eyes on it, but certainly not replacing C#. In some spots it might, right? Because it's like, hey, this is kind of legacy now. If we want to go update it for performance, like maybe it makes sense to go build it in Rust, maybe. But it's a conscious decision that has to be made. I use both C# and Rust, and would definitely not abandon one for the other. Yeah, people are in a pick a side mode for everything these days. Exactly. I interviewed. I have a lot of shout outs of videos. This is cool. let me go pull up my interview with Scott Hanselman. So if you're like a Microsoft fan in some capacity, you probably know who Scott Hanselman is. I got to do this interview with him, which is super cool. So Scott talks about this kind of thing. Let me put that into the chat. And it's towards the end of the interview, but he goes in, like he pulls up stats on stuff. And what we're talking about is like, people have this thing in their mind where it's like, it's only one way or the other, right? Like, you know, pick anything and it's like, oh, well, Rust is going to beat C# and like that, therefore we must use Rust. And it's like, in what though? Like, is it beating it in some performance benchmarks? Absolutely. Sure. Is it beating it in terms of like speed of development, in terms of like community support, in terms of like a million other factors? No. But does that make C# better or Rust better? But like, not necessarily, right? It's going to be contextual. So I think people jump onto stuff way too quickly, and this is literally why we have a meme in software engineering where it depends. It depends on so many things. You can't just like be dogmatic about stuff. So we always have to back up what we're saying with evidence and do an analysis. So, okay, you guys are talking about tons of stuff. I had a whole other section to talk through. I don't know why I'm here. Hello. Nice to see you on Kick. The other thing I wanted to talk through was about like legacy code. So this was a code commute episode. I'm probably only going to stay on for another 15 minutes or so. So maybe I'll keep this one super brief. I'm looking into web app development. That's awesome. It's a good spot to be in for sure. So the thing about legacy code that maybe is news for some people, and I'm sorry if I'm the bearer of bad news, is you're probably going to spend a lot of your career working with legacy code. Like probably a lot. And I think for some people that sounds scary, it sounds boring, it sounds bad, like, I don't want to do that. I want to build new cool stuff. But the reality is like working on stuff that is serving users, right? That users are paying money for, that's the stuff that keeps a business running. And not everything we do is going to be a greenfield project. I mean, it's obvious when I say it that way, right? Not everything, you're not going to go into work every week and start a new project. Unless you work on a prototyping team, which is possible. So maybe you do. And maybe you come back and you say, Nick, I proved you wrong. And I'll say, that's great. I'm glad you're working on a prototyping team. How does it feel to throw out most of the code you write? Right. So odds are you're going to be working with legacy code. And the topic that was submitted on Code Commute was about, hey, look, got a team going, like I joined a team or whatever, and there's a legacy code base and there's no documentation on what to do with this thing, and there's no other team members. Right? So I got this thing, I got to support it. What do I do? Yeah, getters on. Hey, that's the stuff that gave me gray hair at the age of 26. Yeah. You'll notice I don't have hair on my head anymore, but if you look not too long ago, there used to be something up here. I got white in my beard. I got no hair left on my head. I did just shave it, but yeah, I was going bald. I was going pretty bald. I'm going to blame it on the stress, but who knows? So with legacy code, the advice that I was trying to give this person was about navigating situations where you have legacy code and you got to keep it going. Now, again, it depends. It's going to be situational, but something that I tried to recommend they do was like to build up the documentation. So that might be like, it sounds obvious. So if you have to keep something supported and there's no documentation, and this is something that you think is valuable, I would say start documenting. And I don't mean like open up your IDE and just like scroll through the files and start like saying this code does whatever. I mean like you got like prioritize it, right? There's an issue that you got to go fix in it. Cool. This could be something where you go write a we call them battle cards. You can call them different things, but for our on-call engineers, we have what are called battle cards. And that way, when there's an issue happening, they have a resource they can go look up and say, oh, here's the steps for, mitigating this, diagnosing it, debugging, fixing. I think like starting to build that up is hugely beneficial because it doesn't exist. And if you're going to have another problem, especially if you're not there, then someone else has that resource they can start to lean into. So that was one thing. I talked about trying to document areas of code that are brittle. So if you're like, hey, this is the 5th bug we found in this particular kind of area, roughly, keep track of that stuff. Because this next part, if you're building on this legacy code base, you're going to be, say, delivering new features to it. You may want to try and have an idea of where stuff is brittle. So if you've been fixing bugs, trying to get this thing going, keep it running, now you need to go start extending stuff. It would be very helpful to know where the brittle parts are. Maybe you need to go work with your product owner, prioritize rewriting parts of it, refactoring parts, rewriting parts, so you can go build more on top of it, perhaps. But being blind to it and like just like fixing stuff and like not realizing it's the same spot over and over or a couple spots over and over, I think it's a missed opportunity. So I'd recommend some type of documentation for inventorying this stuff. And I think one of the really big takeaways that I wanted to give to this person was around this idea that like you need to have an idea of whether or not you're just keeping this thing running, whatever it is. Could be a shipped product. It could be a live service. Are you keeping this running and there's no intention for the company to build more stuff on it? Pardon me. I got heartburn. Or are you actively trying to build and extend on it? Because if it's the former, I would say touch it as little as possible. If it's working, people are using it, it's paying the bills, customers are happy using it for the most part, touch it as little as possible. The scenario is that it's legacy code, there's no documentation, there's no subject matter experts left. If it's not broken, don't fix it. It's just going to introduce more risk. That's why I started off by explaining if you're going in to fix things because it is broken, start building up the documentation, build up that knowledge base. It's different if you're going to be extending it. By definition, you have to go touching stuff. So this is where I would say like yeah, like you're going to want to know where the brittle areas are. But truthfully, if you just need to keep something maintained, like basically, hey, we inherited this thing and we just got to keep it alive, I would honestly focus your efforts on other stuff and try to address the problem areas as they come up. If there's a backlog of bugs to go fix or customers are unhappy, this is a different story, right? A product owner should be able to say, like, these are the things that we need to go address. They're keeping users from renewing or keeping us from acquiring new users. Like, this is a business decision that we should go fix these things. Go do it. But if it's just like, hey, this stuff's working and I'm looking, I happen to be looking through the code and it's pretty gross. Honestly, if it looks gross, but it's got users paying and no one's complaining and you don't have to go touch it otherwise, I would leave it. Go focus on something else. In the chat, are the main languages I need to know for web development HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Those are probably the main ones that you should know. TypeScript, otherwise for JavaScript, I would say. They're not the only ones that exist, are the only ones you need to know. To start, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's a totally fine base for web development. If someone came to me and said, sort of inverted the question and said, hey, I would like to get into web development, which things would you recommend? I would probably say that the most common language is going to be JavaScript. And because it's web development, HTML and CSS, they're not programming languages, they're markup languages. And you'd want to know those for sure. Now, if it's not JavaScript, I would say, like, I would prefer TypeScript over JavaScript because I like having strong types. So that's one thing. But you could go build web applications with Python or other things. It's totally doable. So you can use C# now. There's support. There's something called Blazor that lets you do front end and back end development all in one. So using C# with the Blazor framework. There's HTML still in that. There's CSS still in that. So those are kind of building blocks for web tech. But the language can vary. So when I say no, those aren't the only languages. How to answer this, right? There are other languages. If you just knew the ones you listed, that's a fine starting point for sure. It's just not that they're the only ones that exist. So let's frame it that way. I gave a really succinct version of the legacy code stuff. But the reason I wanted to kind of bring that up at least was because I thought it was an interesting Code Commute episode. I've already linked Code Commute a bunch in the chat. It is at youtube.com/@codecommute. That is my sort of second YouTube channel. Ridiculously, it's like doing better than my main YouTube channel. It has less than 10% of the subscribers and gets over 50% of the metrics that my primary one gets. And I don't edit the videos and I don't make thumbnails. I just talk in a car. If I told you all of them, you would be too overwhelmed to start somewhere. That's exactly it. Setters, Getters On, I think, said it kind of perfectly there, right? Like, there's lots of languages. So to answer your question, like, starting with that would be a great base. Nothing to be concerned about there. If you wanted to learn other languages, you absolutely could. So how often do I stream? I try to do it every Monday. My Tuesday morning streams are a little bit hit and miss. I might move those to Wednesdays. I have a project at work that's going to require that I have a Wednesday morning sync. And I don't necessarily want to be rushing back from CrossFit. So I have to see how that's going to fit in. So my schedule is kind of changing in the morning. The second stream I do is live coding. So this one's all about software engineering, career development. I don't know why I'm holding my head. I think I've been doing this all day because I shaved my head last night. And if you've never shaved your own head, when it's fresh, it's got like almost like a Velcro kind of feel. So it's like smooth this way, but backwards is like my hand sticks to my head. So I think that I'm not noticing, but I keep touching my head because it's like, it feels real awesome. if you're wondering why I'm doing it. So yeah, I have two different types of streams. If you like this approach, like what I'm doing right now, because I only stream once a week, if you watch Code Commute, you'll probably notice that it's a very similar style, except it's not a live stream. So I'm not driving in my car and talking in the chat because that would be dangerous. But it's the same kind of style. Like when I'm talking on these live streams, none of this is pre-rehearsed. I'm just talking, right? So it's a bit of a stream of consciousness. Code Commute is exactly that. I just talk like this. And then I'm usually getting mad at people in traffic. I think Aaron in the chat was kind of saying that it was kind of funny that I rage at the cars and stuff. Yeah, there's lots of really stupid drivers that I come across. And I do work at Microsoft. Everything that I do for social media is completely unrelated to Microsoft. So you'll hear it come up in some of the examples. This isn't like Microsoft sponsored or anything. My skip level manager has literally joined the live stream before, which is hilarious. It was super cool. We were talking about AI that day, and I saw him join the chat, and I was like, oh man, like my skip level's here, which is super cool. And he was chatting about some of his perspectives on AI and stuff. He was asking like good questions and stuff. But yeah, it's not I do work for Microsoft. My content is not Microsoft sponsored or focused at all. I've been a C# programmer for many years before being at Microsoft. So I think that was another connection people probably see and they wonder that. But yeah, they're separate things. Mad Max Fury Road. That's exactly it. You seem like a very intelligent, very smart. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. No, I like doing this kind of stuff because I think that, number one, if it can be helpful, then it's worth doing. And I have had at least a few people tell me it's been helpful, so I will continue to do it because I feel like if I can spend an hour and help one person, it's absolutely worth it. And the other thing too is like it feels fulfilling. So, Microsoft pays me well. I don't have to be doing stuff like this. I make courses and stuff online. All of my YouTube stuff. I've said this a few times. My primary channel, Dev Leader, like I lose money on that channel. Like I lose hundreds of dollars every month on that channel. It costs me between $500 to $1,000 a month to get videos edited for that channel. And I have just reached approximately $3 per day of income on YouTube. I'm rich, $3 a day. So that covers approximately 0%. Now it covers a very small portion of the editing costs, which is why I'm actually really excited for Code Commute. I love my video editor, but like, if I don't have to get videos edited for Code Commute, that's pretty sweet. Every Monday I do stream. That's what I try to do. I moved it from 9 p.m. Pacific to 7 p.m. Felt like it'd be a better fit for people on the East Coast. So I try to do that. If you can make it, that's awesome. They are all recorded too, so if you ever miss it, you can catch up. If you have stuff, this is for everyone. If you have stuff that you'd like me to talk about on the live stream or on Code Commute, just message me. Comment on something. Let me know what you want to talk about or want me to talk about. And if you want it to be anonymous, message me and just say, hey, like, here's a scenario. Could you talk about this and keep it anonymous? I'm happy to do that. I had on Code Commute, I had someone submit something to me anonymously. Like, I can see their name, but I talked about it anonymously. And they were like, hey, thanks so much. That was good. And they're like, do you mind if I give you more context? And they wrote me like a 2,000 plus word email. It was nuts in like a good way. They had some questions about managing a tricky situation as an engineering manager and provided so much detail. And honestly, the more detail that's provided, the more context I have to try and help. So I thought it was super cool. I'm going to wrap it up here though, folks. So I'm going to do my obligatory stuff where I I advertise. So I apologize. This feels like a gross thing to do, but it's part of what I got to do. So I'm going to go full screen here. Boop, there's my face. This is the newsletter article that I shared some content from. So this is totally free. It's weekly.devleader.ca. If you want to know like 95% of the time what I'm going to talk about in the Monday streams, this goes out every Saturday. It is completely free to sign up for. If you do get a paid subscription, you get all of the archive newsletters. So there's over 70 newsletters now. You get all of those issues, and you get private Discord access. So if you want me to talk through different things there, happy to kind of help you out there. But otherwise, like, so I'll try to do, this one was a pretty short one, but I write articles every Friday that go out Saturday. And then I have a recap from social media, so the videos and stuff I post. So you can see there's my dumb face driving on the highway, doing code commute, more code commute. This week was a lot of code commute. I was at the office almost every day, which is pretty rare. But yeah, you can see, like, there's me having fun on the commute because I get to hang out with you guys. So that's the newsletter. I do have courses. This is actually, you're the first group that's hearing this. So I did just submit all of the material for a third career-focused Dome Train course. So let me put this into the chat as well if you're interested. My courses are a lot more structured, obviously. It's not just me blabbing. And the career ones I'm doing with Ryan Murphy, who's an engineering manager at Yelp. He's awesome. And so we have 2 up right now. Third one just got submitted to Dome Train literally this morning. And then I have other C# based ones. So for example, these 2 here, getting started in deep dive, it's 11 hours of like learning C# from nothing. I always tell people this. I don't think that courses are a replacement for learning things. I think courses can be a supplement that's helpful for some people. But I always encourage you that you're building things and not just following tutorials or just taking courses or whatever. You need to be building things. And then finally, Dev Leader is my main channel. So depending on how you got here, that's not where I want to go. Where's my channel? There's a lot of video games there. I play video games. I was playing Path of Exile. My main channel is Dev Leader. So these are all my tutorials and polished videos. So check that out if you're interested in that. And then Code Commute is the channel that I've been mentioning a bunch today. So yeah, appropriate facial expressions for drowning in legacy code. Laughing, crying, cry laughing. Yes, do them together. So yeah, those are the things that I got to share with you folks. If you find any of that content interesting, please check it out. I post on every single social media platform every day. So if you're, tuning in from somewhere and you want to see more of me, like in written format, whatever else, feel free to check out Dev Leader. I think I'm just not on Snapchat, but probably everywhere else. I don't think you'd want software engineering advice through Snapchat. That'd be kind of weird. So thank you so much for tuning in. I need to figure out a live stream time for coding, so I apologize. It's kind of, might have to resume next week. And otherwise, I will see you folks next Monday, same time. Take care, and thanks so much for being here.